and that is the Detroit Lions under Coach Campbell. Lost a couple of pieces in running backs, Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Traded Swift, is it draft day or day after draft? Around that time. Also lost wide receiver DJ Chark and cornerback Mike Hughes. And they also traded Jeff Okudah, their cornerback, in the offseason as well, that they drafted a couple of years ago. Addition-wise, they brought in running back David Montgomery, guard Graham Glasnow, and brought back wide receiver Marvin Jones, because if I remember correctly, he had a stint there previously, so veteran presence. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they brought in defensive lineman Michael Brockers, linebacker Jared Davis, another reunion there, cornerbacks Emmanuel Mosley and Cameron Sutton, and then safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from the Eagles. And then draft-wise, they went and grabbed running back Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round out of Alabama. And then also with their other first-round pick, via the Rams, I think the first one was the Rams. This one was technically their pick. They grabbed linebacker Jack Campbell out of Iowa around 1 pick 18. And then also in the second round, grabbed tight end Sam Laporta, also out of Iowa. And then safety Brian Branch out of Alabama. So going heavy in Alabama, Iowa, those first few rounds. And then grabbed quarterback Hendon Hooker out of Tennessee in round 3. Obviously, Hooker will be probably out for most of the season as he's recovering from an ACL injury. Nonetheless, though, John, Lions, they were almost in the playoffs. They needed some dominoes to fall for them. Week 17 didn't happen. Didn't matter. They still went out and beat my Packers. Or it was week 18, but they beat my Packers for pride there at the end of the season. A lot of people are expecting this team to take the next step. What are your thoughts on the Lions heading into this season?
Yeah, I think the Lions had a really good offseason. You know, you lose certain pieces like a Jamal Williams, who was very productive, but you replace him with multiple options in David Montgomery and then Jahmyr Gibbs, who, you know, they were apparently very high on Jahmyr Gibbs. They obviously took him at 12, which I thought was a lot higher than he would end up going. But apparently they were even potentially willing to take him higher because I think they had the 6th overall pick and they traded back. And they thought about taking him at 6, which was Bijan Robinson was still on the board because that's how bad they apparently wanted him. Who knows if that story is true, but that's what I've heard about their thoughts on Jahmyr Gibbs. And so, yeah, I think they had a really good offseason. I really like the additions in the secondary. The secondary was very bad for them last year. Like, I think they were one of the worst secondaries in the whole league. And so you add Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you get Emmanuel Mosley, Cameron Sutton. Like, some of these guys they're all veterans. They've been in the league for a handful of years. And, you know, for example, Emmanuel Mosley back with San Francisco, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he's been in multiple successful schemes with, you know, the Eagles and the Saints. So I like the additions that they added. Also, you know, you add in Michael Brockers, Jared Davis. They just got like reinforcements, it feels like. And so I like what they did. And then, you know, obviously in the draft on the defensive end, they also take Jack Campbell, which was another pick that I thought was a little high. I didn't expect a linebacker to actually even go in the first round. I think there was 2. But then they got Brian Branch, who I was very high on. So they got, you know, a really great safety to add in the back end as well. So I like the safety duo they got. So I like the offseason, honestly. I really think that they addressed the needs that they needed to fix, like tight end, like running back. And I think that there's other players that could potentially take the next step for them this year. I'm talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams whenever he comes back from suspension, Aiden Hutchinson. Like, they have quite a few players who, you know, could be very involved this season, you know, in terms of the overall success. Even Penei Sewell, for example. Just a lot of young guys that they've been building around that I think could be taking a next step along the rest of the team, which could see them even maybe challenge for the division. You never know. That said, I don't know where they'll finish in the division. I still think there's certain things that could potentially hold them back. Jared Goff is good, not great. The secondary, although I just said I like all the additions, it remains to be seen how they'll actually work together. When you bring in a lot of new pieces, that's not guaranteed to always work. So that could still be somewhat of an issue. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with the Lions, but I think this is a very promising offseason. And considering that last year, I think you and I were both saying like, hey, the Lions could surprise a lot of people this year. And I think that they did. So I would say that we were right on that. I wouldn't be shocked if they continue that upward momentum and maybe even challenge for the division title.
Yeah. I mean, overall on paper, it's just hard to disagree. Yeah, like the Lions seems like they filled out the roster really well. You mentioned the cornerback additions. Like, yes, they aren't stars, Mosley and Sutton, but like you said, they were a pretty bad secondary last year, and just getting solid starters is great. And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he could be that dynamic safety for them as well. My only concern, especially for the Lions defensively, is outside of Aiden Hutchinson, that front four, really that front seven, can anyone else have an impact outside of Aiden Hutchinson? Because we mentioned, these cornerbacks, solid, but when he faced the elite teams like the Niners or the Eagles, you think about that conference specifically, like how are you going to slow them down? I know Aiden Hutchinson's great, but he's just one guy, and it's going to depend on can they have someone else be a disruptor alongside him, because especially not even those teams, but teams may now send more help Aiden Hutchinson's way, and it's going to be a lot more pressure and onus on the supporting cast. And when those guys consistently step up and be a force to alleviate that pressure, or make teams abandon their game plan, because man, this other guy is killing us, and we can't just focus on Aiden Hutchinson, taking him out of the game. And then obviously, of course, Aiden Hutchinson just continuing to be, if he can continue to be awesome, that'll be key for them. But yeah, their offense should be exciting. Hopefully Jameson Williams gets back, because we saw late last year he makes some splash plays late in the season. Obviously suspended due to, is it the gambling, right? Yeah. Gambling things. So come on, Nate. So he should be back. But yeah, and then I will say Jared Goff took obviously very solid step last year. I think we've seen that as long as you have good supporting cast around Goff, he can make all the plays. He can deliver. He's just not the quarterback to elevate the team himself per se, and go and just make plays on his own. So yeah, I expect the Lions to be competitive, and man, I just hate that they're in my division now, because I used to love beating up on the Lions, and now that's not really the case as we've seen in last year and really in recent years. So a lot of things brewing in Detroit, and we'll see if Dan Campbell and the gang can build off last year, and we'll see too. You mentioned there's 2 first-round picks. I agree with you. I felt there were a little bit of reach on both ends in regards to Gibbs and Campbell. So we'll see if it pays off. And apparently Laporte has been killing it. I know it's only camp talk, but Laporte has been really killing it in camp. So we'll see if if some of those rookies can have instant impact